That's a high enough number. Let's start. Welcome everyone. Welcome. John Cooper, getting your transcripts and recordings on that you want and all that stuff. Lovely to see you. Technical webinar. What number is it? Let's have a look. 14, apparently, I'm told. How exciting. We should put that on the slides, guys. Feels like a while since the last one. What a packed agenda we've got for you. Let's have a look at that agenda, beg your pardon, Dr. Gareth Tilley. We're going to be, Gareth insists we have to do the introduction to D-TRO, whether we like it or not. John Cooper's going to be talking us through the previous webinar. We're going to hear from JHB and Mr. Pauly on what we've been up to on a technical note of the last few sprints. So nobody wants to hear from me. Nobody wants to hear from Dr. Gareth Tilley either, but we have to bring him in. Gareth, would you like to tell us about D-TRO?
I'd love to, thanks, Paul. Especially for your benefit, in case you've forgotten, Paul, a little bit about D-TRO. Just a very high level, we're conscious that we get new people join these webinars. So it's an API first service, very simple architecture. We have a publisher API, and that's for the traffic regulation authorities, which are mainly local authorities, to publish D-TROs to the service. And then we have a data consumer API as well. That's all supported by our data specification, which has got our data model in it. It's got a JSON schema, and we've got a load of example files and other good things like that as well. These technical webinars, they've got a technical focus, and a lot of the content and a lot of the agenda is basically feedback from yourselves, from the community. So that'll be from user research we've done. We do a lot of one-to-one sessions with key users of the service. We've got an advisory group as well. We do user research, and then also we obviously speak to people at conferences as well. So a lot of the content of this technical webinar comes from people who are attending it. That's all I want to say, Paul. The intro is over, you'll be pleased to know.
Thank you, Gareth, very much for that. I had one job to do and failed to do it. So please put any questions in the Q&A rather than the chat. Various boring reasons for that, but it helps us gather them later and things like that. John Cooper was telling me. And also, I should just say that in terms of a legal go live date and finances, we have got everything agreed now with MHCLG, the local government department, the local government association, our finance internally. So we still need to go to ministers for agreement. But so I can't sit here and tell you what the dates are and what the situation is with any money, but it is progressing. I know it's been a slow and painful journey. I know that nearly as well as anyone, but we are making progress on that side of things, guys. As soon as we have something to tell you, you won't be able to stop us talking about it, basically. Talking of people that you can't stop talking, ladies and gentlemen, a beta update from John Cooper.
Thanks, Paul. Here to run you through a quick update on where we got to since the last webinar, which was back in February, I think. We're now at approximately 111,000 digital traffic regulation orders in the service. We've got 228 odd publisher applications. That's up significantly. And consumers is up even more, at nearly 200 consumer apps taking data various service. Go on to the next slide, please. So we, as you know, operate various different version numbers, and we have more on the version that we've just released coming up later in the show. But here's a breakdown of where the orders in which schema version they've been received. And you'll see that the largest slice of it is on the version 3.5, which is our last, and there's 3.51 as well. Second highest, 3.4. So you'll see as we go backwards through the schema versions, we get progressively fewer orders in the service. Others will be talking very learnedly on things such as the versioning of these older versions of D-TROs. We progress through new versions. We'd like to keep the content up to date, so that's why we've been doing that. We also are deprecating older versions so that you can no longer send in the content in these older versions. 3.4 was deprecated at the launch of 4. More on all these things coming up later in the webinar. Next slide, please. So there's your version 4 went live right at the last working day of May, as we said. Version 3.5.1 will remain live until the autumn, when we will probably have a version 5 coming out. As I said, version 3.4 has been deprecated. We had an advisory group just this week, and our next one is in July. These happen roughly every 6 weeks. And we've timed the next one so that we can bridge the summer holiday. Gareth said we use GitHub, the primary source of technical queries and updates, and us telling you about what the latest information, and you asking us questions in issues. And we have over 150 issues we keep maintain on a regular basis. We close down the ones that have been that we ingest the information of these issues into our wide knowledge, which we will eventually be making public to you all as through our ServiceNow tool. No, we've said that is coming. It is still coming. We will be probably in a position to announce launch details on that very soon. You can see a lot been going on since the last time we had a webinar. Numbers have increased. Particularly, we've well above 100,000 orders now, and we continue to do various improvements. We'll tell you a lot more about anything else that's been going on as we go through the webinar. So I think that's it for me for an update. It's back to Paul.
Thank you, John. You've just got a slight case of like audio hiccups there. We get like 90% of what you say, though, 95%, and it's all fine. But yeah, if you've got any little tweaks you want to make to your audio for later, then go ahead. Someone who has no audio problems, ladies and gentlemen, it's Gareth Tilley to talk about use cases.
Hi everyone, thanks Paul. As you know, kind of one of the key activities I'm looking at is the use cases, and very conscious that it's a really broad data set we're looking at with D-TRO. So we've got everything from parking restrictions, we've got elements in around speed limits, very broad, as well as the temporary orders for road closures. So when we speak to data consumers, we're very struck by these different data sets and different use cases people are looking at in terms of using the data. So if you do have any use case of your data consumer, we'd be really like to capture those. So please email us and we can set up a call, and really like to understand how you're using the data in particular. One that we are focusing on is bridge height data. And the reason for this is it's been flagged to us by quite a few people, in particular people in the public transport sector. It's obviously a safety critical data set, so we are looking to get that data set into the D-TRO service, and then we're looking to work with people to data consume that and ideally get that information into cabs and vehicles around the country to reduce bridge strikes. So we've been doing a core piece of work facilitated by Causeway, and that's with Oxfordshire County Council. And the focus has been on very much on getting the data set in place, the bridge height data in play. And then what we're now doing, I'm now setting up calls with the bus operator side, so that's Stagecoach and Oxford Bus in that area. And we're looking at how they can take the data out of D-TRO and get that into the services, into the cabs. So that's well underway. We've also recently presented at the Real-Time Information Group, and John and I did that. And that's an industry group. It was originally sponsored by the Department for Transport, and it comprises local authorities, so TRAs, public transport operators, but it's also got a load of technology providers in that group as well. So it's that real community of those with bus tracking systems. And it's also a vehicle that can be used for creating national guidance. They've got a whole suite of documentation to support real-time bus information. And we're looking to work with them in the future around D-TRO as well. And following up on that, following as a result of that webinar, we've had really good conversations with Transport for Greater Manchester, First Group, and also speaking to Portsmouth as well. So we're really building up a list of areas where we can start to use and look at this bridge height use case. So if you are a TRA with bridge height data and you'd like that published into get that published in D-TRO, and we can talk to data consumers, again, I'll be really keen to speak to you. So I'll put up the email address at the end of the webinar. But yeah, do get in touch about bridge height data or any other use cases that you might have for D-TRO. Thanks, Paul. It's back to you now.
Gareth, this seems like a good moment to tell you live on this webinar that my talk at the Elcrig Innovation Festival, which is later this month, guys, in the Midlands on the 24th and 25th, is going to be entitled D-TRO Theory into Practice, or something like that, Gareth. So you and I need to talk, and I need to borrow some of the material you've just done there.
Excellent.
There you go, guys. A bit of live news for you. Now, excitingly, we have John Howard Booth to talk us through the most recent specification update.
Thank you, Paul. Next slide, please. So those of you who are plumbed into our GitHub resource will have seen that version 4 has been going live for some time. So we did a release of the document, working to our planned schedule. We did a release of documentation at the end of March. We released it into the integration environment at the end of April, and then at the end of May into the production environment. I'll talk on the next slide as to what is in version 4 in a very summarized. Can you go back, please? Thank you. You might have noticed a change in the numbering system. So we're trying to be a bit more rigorous in our version numbering. So we will do a major version number update when we are creating breaking changes. So it's possible that the version that gets released towards the end of 2026 may be 4.1. We don't know, but certainly the expectation is that we're working towards a 6-monthly release schedule at this point in time. Next slide, please. So version 4 isn't a colossal change on what was there previously. The primary change is that we have done some tidying up and restructuring of how conditions should be modelled within provisions within the TRO records, and that was basically because there were too many possible options of doing things previously that we shouldn't have allowed. So we've tightened that up. We've made limited number of other changes, many of which are just adding additional values into lists where they've been user requested. And we've also tightened the validation that we've got in the background. But overall, there isn't a substantial change with the release into version 4. It's worth mentioning, of course, all the time we receive user queries and comments. A couple of observations have been made around how we model speed limits, and we are looking at that. That is something that would come into the next version, but you're likely to see before the next version that we may release some new endpoints that will enable you to search for speed limit data, because at the moment the current search doesn't allow you to access them. But more news in due course. So that was all from me, fairly short.
Thank you very much, JHB. Let's hear now from Ben Pawley, our lead tech on the upversioning issue. Ben.
Thank you very much, Paul. Yes, so I think we spoke on the last technical webinar about our approach to upversioning. So what we're intending to do here is to bring legacy records that have been submitted to the D-TRO service in line with the more recent developments in the data model and the schema. So we're pleased to report that we've actually finished the development of all the processes and tools needed to actually do that and run that across all of the data to upversion legacy records up to version 3.5.1. This is really important because not only does it kind of mitigate the risk of legacy data being in the service, but it also makes it easier to consume data from a consumption point of view. If we have lots of data hanging around with old versions or lots of versions, consumers potentially have to have different logic for consuming different versions of the data model. So this should hopefully provide an easier kind of route to consumption of data as well. Happy to report that we've performed a dry run of the upversioning exercise across all of the production data within our controlled development environment, which has allowed us to put together a schedule, work out exactly when we're going to do each of these things, and do it in a controlled manner so that we can keep an eye on any errors or anything that goes awry during the process. We don't want to necessarily just run it against everything in the production data all at once without having a mechanism for kind of monitoring and seeing what's going wrong, if anything. It's important to stress that the original data that's been submitted to the service is going to be kept for historic purposes. So we've actually got the ability to roll back if anything goes awry. But as I mentioned, a huge amount of testing has gone into this to prove the functionality. So we're pretty happy with where it's sitting at the moment. Next slide, please. Cool. So just a bit of a recap of the actual kind of volumes we're talking about. As you saw from the slide what John Cooper was talking about earlier, 3.5.0 is the most significant proportion of data that we want to upversion, but actually we're in a unique position where all 3.5.0 records are already compliant with version 3.5.1. So that's essentially a change of the schema version, but not actually any change to the underlying data behind it for those records. Earlier schema versions, so prior to version 3.4.0, they show quite a lot of variation in how data is represented within D-TROs, and therefore they require a little bit more careful handling and a little bit more logic in terms of actually doing the upversioning logic. That's why we've developed this schedule where we do things in controlled manners at the schema level, at the schema version level, and we're going to do batches within that as well. So batches of 500 and monitor everything closely to see how things are working. Version 3.4.0 onwards are small incremental changes. So we don't really have many concerns over how that's going to go. That seems to be pretty straightforward. Going forwards, this upversioning functionality is going to be developed and implemented and deployed alongside the release of new data model versions and schema versions. So although this time round we're kind of doing everything that exists in the service and bringing those up to speed, going forwards it will just be done at the time that a new release happens. So there won't ever be this kind of one-off task ever happening again. Probably should mention, which I haven't done, we're upversioning to the latest but one version of the schema. So as has been talked about, version 4.0 is currently live in production. So all existing records in the service will be upversioned to the version prior to that, which is 3.5.1. And that just is so that people don't have to develop and be working on kind of the bleeding edge version of the data. Gives them a little bit more time to kind of put together tools for doing that. Last thing to say on this is our testing's done. We're going live imminently with this, so we'll be starting the upversioning of schema 3.2.3. The intention is to start that tomorrow, in fact. So over the coming next couple of weeks, we will slowly be chunking through all those schema versions and records to bring them in line with 3.5.1. I think I'm up next as well, so I'll carry on. Next slide, please.
Allow it.
Yeah. Brilliant. So just to provide some technical updates on what's been happening on the API. Again, at the last technical webinar, we talked about geographical search. So this was something that has been requested a number of times by consumers of the service, the ability to actually search for D-TROs by some geography. And we mentioned that we were kind of in the test phase of that. Well, I'm pleased to announce that actually we finished all of that testing and we have some geographical search capability that's been implemented and tested. So yeah, allowing users to make requests to a dedicated endpoint where they can provide a bounding box and find D-TROs that match within or intersect with that provided geometry is really useful. We've had a lot of queries come in about people wanting to find D-TROs within specific postcodes or counties. So hopefully this is a flexible way that allows you to upload or provide a geography and find matching D-TROs within that geography that's provided. It's also future-proofed. So although it's relatively basic in terms of functionality at the moment, everything's been designed in a way that can support more complex geometry queries if required later on. And we're looking forward to kind of user feedback on these features so that we can gauge interest in developing more complex functionality if required. We don't have an official release date of when this is yet. We know that people are really keen to use it. But we're kind of fitting this into our existing plans. There's a lot going on with upversioning and stuff at the moment. So we will, of course, communicate all of this out. And hopefully you guys are looking forward to seeing this being released. Next slide, please. Excellent. So a little bit on large D-TROs. Again, on the last technical webinar, we talked about the submission of large D-TROs and actually the retrieval of large D-TROs to the service. So we see a lot of variability in the size of D-TROs. Some of them, most of them, in fact, very small, but a number of them, an increasing number, actually being submitted to the service that are quite large, and it interferes with kind of the expected approach of the service. Retrieving such large volume or putting data in and getting data out in the request response lifecycle is causing some problems in many cases. We've taken a bit more of an analytical approach to looking at these large D-TROs in the service, helping us understand what the cause is that makes them large. And off the back of that, we've put together some guidance on proposed methods that can be used and may be suitable for reducing D-TRO size. So as a little bit of a spoiler, this includes things like minification of payloads, restructuring to reduce structural repetition of D-TROs, and potentially some geometry simplification approaches that all help and can be used in conjunction, maybe to reduce the size of D-TROs. We've been working closely with the large D-TRO working group to also discuss solutions to this problem. And an output of that is we've put together and agreed a new pipeline for supporting the submission of these large D-TROs being handled in the background, so not in that request response lifecycle. And I think we've got a lot of kind of architectural decisions that have been made around that. The architectural work is ongoing, but I'm pleased to report that we now have kind of an agreed approach for how we will do this, and we understand the core architecture of how this will work. So we look to update you on further updates for this as we get through the majority of this work. Next slide, please. Cool. And I think the last thing I wanted to talk about was provision level management. So we've been hard at work putting together a mechanism for managing D-TROs at the provision level. So if those of you who are familiar with the data model or the structure of the D-TRO will probably know that a D-TRO can contain multiple, or in some cases, many provisions. And actually, there is no mechanism for making updates to that D-TRO at the provision level. If you need to do so, you're forced to amend at the whole D-TRO level. So that requires sending the whole D-TRO back through to the service in an update call. just to potentially change, a very small part of a single provision. So what we've been looking at doing is putting together a set of endpoints that allow users to create, update, and delete individual provisions whilst preserving the rest of the D-TRO. So this is great. It means that now there is a mechanism for operating at the provision level. It reduces a lot of overhead. You no longer have to send your whole potentially large payload through. You just have to send the D-TRO that you're creating or updating or deleting. Reduces overhead, reduces the risk of errors happening, and reduces a lot of kind of inefficiency of processing. So I'm sure you can imagine that just adding or making an amendment, a small amendment to an existing provision, having to send the whole D-TRO through is quite inefficient. A lot of processing overhead around that. We're currently finalizing our internal testing, stress testing it to make sure it behaves as we expect. Before we're looking at getting it deployed to an environment and actually working closely with some users who've expressed specifically interest in this. So running a little bit of a limited user test period where we can gauge its effectiveness and see how it works for users, and we can potentially iterate on it if needs be. We're looking at a wider environment release after that, obviously, and again, that's to be confirmed, but we will provide updates on as and when that looks to be being released into the production environments. I think that's everything from me, so I will hand back over to Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much. That provision level updating and upversioning stuff is the sort of thing we've been working on with the advisory group. So really great to be updating the wider world about that stuff. And yeah, it's right at the top of our thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the section of the agenda known as the Q&A. But there has been no Q's or indeed A's in the chat or anywhere. So there was one, but it seems to have been deleted. So I guess that meant it got answered. Yeah, John Cooper.
There is one. It's in a comment of a message that's been deleted, which is why it's hidden, I think.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Okay. Yes.
From Keith
Would you like
Miles.
to take that, JC?
So the question, I'll read it out, from Keith at Knowsley. We have been using map-based TROs since 2015. In the absence of any changes to the TRO procedures, we have backed up the TRO maps with written descriptions. I have two questions. One, have you done away with written descriptions? And if so, how have you addressed the legalities of this and the potential for procedural changes? And second one, our TROs have been mapped using map info. However, it feels like we are somewhat in the hands of service providers in terms of determining the suitability of our map tiles and whether any essential conversions are necessary to make them D-TRO compliant. Who is best placed to give us some advice, please? Thanks. Not sure if that's the only one, but
I mean, you're sort of doing my job there, aren't I? I mean, it's supposed to be, I don't know how I convince you just to do the reading of the question, JC. That's kind of my job. Would you like to tackle any of question one at all, sir?
I think the main, on the first part to do with the structure of orders themselves, it's important to note that D-TRO doesn't change the underlying way in which orders are made. The D-TRO itself is a digital extract of those orders and doesn't contain all of the legal niceties of actual TROs. So we haven't changed anything to do with the way in which TROs are made with D-TRO. We are just creating an additional requirement for digital extracts of TROs to be sent to the D-TRO service. Hopefully I've got the essence of that question right in my answer. And I think in terms of the second part, yes, you are correct, Keith, that there are digital solution providers out there providing solutions to get your data into D-TRO. However, there are several of these, and we do have a list of them on GitHub in the participant list. Perhaps that might need a quick recheck and refresh, because it hasn't been updated in very recent times. We do however, maintain it is possible to use software and develop solutions to self-publish D-TROs to the service, and we know that some traffic regulation authorities, TRAs, are doing this. So in terms of who it is best to talk to about this, well, it is not really something that we can't make personal recommendations on who you should talk to, but we will make sure the list gets updated and that you're able to see it. I think also there are providers that are on G-Cloud, or whatever the new name for G-Cloud is, that have offerings for digital solutions to do the digital traffic regulation orders. I don't know if anyone else has any other angle on that. That would be my take there.
That was good,
Yeah.
Jesse. Dr. Garrett.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing I'd add is if you do want a direct conversation with us, feel free to drop us a line on the email that we'll put out, which is d-tro@dft.gov.uk, and we can arrange that call with you.
Are there any? I've seen there's a new one came in whilst I was. There was a comment from.
Yes. I'm going to get to that. Thank you very much. Someone says, so we can't do a district-wide consolidation order and send this through to the D-TRO system. We have to break it up before submitting, ? To which I would say no. We have had people, I think Redbridge sticks in my head as an example, where I think pretty much the whole of Redbridge is covered by one permanent order. But I'm going to throw over to John Howard Booth there and see if he wants to back me up and make any comments, and then maybe Ben Pawley with his large hat on.
Thank you, Paul. I think the last two questions probably indicate that there's something that we should include within Gareth's introduction. So the D-TRO service is data-centric, and it's clear that we need to ensure that there's no misunderstanding. So you're not being asked to scan your orders and send them anywhere. You're being asked to extract the data from your orders, and it's an important differentiation to make. Why do that? Because the data that we are putting in place, or rather you're putting in place, is there to be used by data consumers for a vast variety of reasons, including, but certainly not limited to, supporting digital mapping for automated vehicles. So I would certainly say the answer to Mark's question is yes, you can send in a full district-wide consolidation order, but you are digitizing the content, not scanning the document.
Thank you, JHB. Ben, did you want to add anything there at all, or do you think John's covered it?
I think that's been covered very well from John. The only thing I would add is, from a technical point of view, obviously feeding on from the large D-TROs work that I was talking about, there shouldn't really be a technical limitation as to being able to submit large consolidation orders. That's what we're working on. So although in its current form, it might be tricky if you have a district-wide consolidation order that's very large, that's exactly the problem that we're intending to solve with this asynchronous processing. So yeah, as that develops, there should be no technical limitation for doing that.
It's a good question. What level of schema flexibility exists for borough-specific requirements? I guess I would say, tell us what your borough-specific requirement is, and we'll tell you whether the schema meets it. John Howard Booth, have we ever met a borough-specific requirement that we couldn't meet, as it were?
The very simple answer so far, Paul, is no. We fully well recognise that there may be instances which are not covered by the model, and we are constantly keeping those in mind and bringing them into the latest version where we're able to do so. I don't think we've run across any requirements that we can't cover so far.
Yeah, agree. Thanks, John. How do we know which data to extract from our map-based TROs, and can we do that ourselves without a DSP? Keith, feel free to drop us a line around that. We'll try and keep this brief, but John Cooper, is that why you've come onto camera for that one?
It was actually just to add into the bit about schema flexibility and basically different types of orders. And I think just following up from what John says is that we are in the still relatively early days of receiving data, don't have complete national coverage, and by no means have we seen every different type of order, even of regular orders, come into the service yet. We are very well aware of the chances of extra weird and wonderful types of orders being out there that might test the strength of our schema, and we stand ready to be able to address them as and when they would come up. And we would take questions about how to deal with anything that didn't quite fit the normal course of things as and when they would happen, and we would consider modifying the schema to react to something that hasn't yet been thought of in the normal order of business for the development of the service.
Thank you, John Cooper. Spoken like a true product owner. Gareth Tilley, would you like to address the question about knowing which data to extract and doing it yourself without a DSP? Feel free to reference in your answer, the GitHub and all that sort of good stuff.
Yeah, again, we can have a direct conversation with you about that if that would be useful. But we do know some local authorities have created their own JSON schema from their TROs and have been publishing to the service. So the data model, the specifications, all available on the GitHub. I'll put up at the end of this slide, on the next slides, about how you can find all that information. And then that data model provides the content of what needs to be in a D-TRO effectively.
Thank you, Gareth. See, people start having fun and asking questions once we get into it, don't they? This happens every time. Are the DFT content that the software operators meet the requirements of D-TRO? And if not, have you communicated to them, or are they aware of what they need to adjust within their respective software packages? Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, we've actually just done some work that I was looking at in the office literally yesterday, where we've analysed different software providers and their the sort of data quality around I think it was like the naming and stuff like that, and we've done other sort of analysis of that type as well around data. Gareth, not to throw you under the bus again, but you've been looking at some of that data as well, and Ben, feel free to chime in if you want as well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So, as you say, Ben's been doing some really good work and analysing what we've got in the service at the moment. I've got regular touchpoint calls in with the digital solution providers who are publishing to the service on behalf of local authorities, and we're collectively, we're highlighting back to them where we see issues with some of the ways that some of the data might be formatted or how it's landing into the service. So we've got regular dialogue with digital solution providers on that, and we're looking across the piece to continue to improve the quality of data in the service. Do you want to add anything, John?
Yeah, I would just add to that if obviously there are some well-known DSPs out there, and we are talking to them regularly, and they've been on board for a long time. As and when any new supplier might come round, though, and with no proven track record, we have an integration environment that we would make sure that they joined first, improved their capability of successfully publishing orders to essentially our sandbox environment before we let them loose with accounts in production, working with real life orders that they do in collaboration with their partner TRA. So we do have mechanisms in place to ensure that the structural content of what is sent in is up to scratch, and we are now upping our game on the broader data quality issues that have been alluded to as we've gone on through the webinar.
Thank you, John. Well, that seems to be the last question. So to keep us on track, I think what needs to be done now is to go over to Gareth Tilley to give us that little topper. Gareth, go ahead.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I think again a lot of you will know this, but there's lots of ways to get in touch with us. So we've got our website, which is where you can create an account, whether you want to be a publisher or a data consumer. We've got our email address, so please do use that to get in touch with us. That's d-tro@dft.gov.uk. The GitHub is the main store for all our technical documentation, and also that's where we've got a live issues log as well, where people can raise a question about of a technical nature and also respond to any queries that people have come in with. We've got a website on the Transport Technology Forum, so this houses quite a lot of material around D-TRO. So that's got regular announcements and elements like that. It's got user guidance as well. It also gives a link to our YouTube playlist, which is where this webinar and all our other webinars are found. So we'll be putting the live video of this up on into our YouTube playlist. And then that was the final slide. JC, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I was just I did mention it in my short slot about ServiceNow and the overall integration of all the help and everything that we will still be launching. That will be our major upgrade to how we provide help and guidance to everyone on this at various different levels using different approaches. So watch out for that. We will be integrating things a lot better with that one.
Thank you both for that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this webinar more than I've enjoyed following England's batting performance in the test match today. 113 for 8 now. Armed with this new information about D-TRO, not the cricket, go forth and prosper. We look forward to seeing you at Technical Webinar 15, and hey, maybe even a full fat webinar in the near future. Take care of yourselves. Thank you very much.